Hello, welcome back. I have just realised, just because I can see it in the camera, I've still got this on. Let's maybe just pull that down a little bit. Hope you're all well. This chair is squeaky. I am taking the opportunity whilst Danny is having a nap. He is just behind us here. Also got a lovely autumnal display of pumpkins. So I have decided, I wasn't too sure if I was going to do this or not, but I've decided to do it because I found listening to other people's birthing stories really helpful, and it was, for me, the best way that I learnt and understood what was going to happen. I found reading that I didn't absorb the information very well, and due to just different reasons I didn't end up doing any kind of classes or anything like that. So but I watched quite a few of these type of stories and I just found it really, really useful. So originally I wasn't really going to do it, and then actually, because I had quite a lot happen in my birth, I thought it might be just useful for someone else. And also I love talking about it. Even though it was long and lots happened, not lots happened, but it's painful. I look back at my birth with a real fond memory, and I craved it. I don't know if anyone else felt this, right? I will get into it in a minute, I will. If anyone else who's been through labour, that I really mourned. I was like, I want to do it again. I was sat at home, I'd think about it, I'd cry. I don't know what the right word is I'm looking for. I really enjoyed it. My mum and my partner were more traumatised than I was. I just know that the cat is starting to lick ketchup off a plate. No better. And they are, well, my mum especially is telling me how traumatised I should be and how stressed I should be and how hard it all is, where I'm like, I feel fine. I look back at it in such oh my God, I crave to do it again in a really strange way. Anyway, so let's get into it. We'll see how long I've got. He might wake up, and it might be that I change settings, but let's see if I can get it all done here. I was due the 15th of September and Danny came on the 27th of September. So he was officially 12 days overdue, but I went into labour when I was 10 days overdue, so on the Monday. And I had leading up to that I think it's called stretch and sweep on the Friday before the Monday. I knew that his head was pretty low for quite some time because I couldn't lie down without having to pee. So I wasn't sleeping well anyway during my pregnancy. So if you've seen any of the other videos, sleep just didn't really happen. But I went and had my stretch and sweep on the Friday, and I was 41 weeks pregnant at that point. And then didn't feel much different. Afterwards, people say you can either go into labour quite quickly after. I then, on the Monday, because that was it, my induction text came through that you're going to be induced on the Friday the 28th, and didn't want to be induced. It was more just the fact that I really wanted, if I could, absolutely understand that emergency C-section is there and there's nothing wrong with that, but I really wanted to try and experience vaginal birth, is that right? As much as I could. And a lot of the time inductions can go into C-sections, not always. Some inductions are so positive. I think it's more all of the stories that I had been told from all of my friends that had inductions and went into C-sections. Anyway, so I had my text come through, and say for the Friday the 28th on the Monday. It was a Monday, whatever date that was. And I was like, right, come on. Like, I've been doing all of the things, bouncing on the balls, eating all the pineapple, which I don't really, bouncing on the ball definitely, or the rotations definitely do work, but the pineapple and all that, I'm not too sure. But I went for a really long walk that day, and I just went out and I found a hill, really got up and down that hill, because I've been told that's something that's really good. But what I also did do, probably for the first time, is I got home and I just chilled right out. I didn't worry about work. I didn't think about, I had to clean the house. I just got on the sofa. I got a massive bowl of crisps. I found a film that I loved, and I just chilled out and had a bit of a sleep. Like, I couldn't really sleep in the day, but I actually slept. And it was like my body was telling me that you need to rest a little bit now because something's about to happen. So that was the kind of the day leading up to the labour. So there's nothing major giving me, okay, I'm going to go into labour soon. Monday evening, oh, that was it. So the Sunday before, I'd gone to bed and I had the worst backache. And I just felt, this feels a bit strange. And what had been happening a couple of days leading up to that Monday was, I don't know whether it was definitely a mucus plug, but there was, each time I went to the toilet, like, it wasn't all in one go, but it looked like what I've been described, what a mucus plug looks like, but gradually, if that makes sense. Anyway, the Monday, that was it. So sorry, the Sunday I went to bed, backache, really feeling like, okay, something's gonna happen. Went to sleep, woke up about 1-2 o'clock, felt totally normal, and I was so defeated. I was like, okay, no, that wasn't labour then. So Monday just cracked on with my day as normal. Monday night, around 7:30, we were just about to sit down and have some dinner, and I just had this like period pain feeling come over me, and I hadn't felt that before. So I was like, okay, this could be something. But because of the night before, I just didn't read into it, or like think, oh, I'm going into labour, because I had a similar thing the night before. But then it happened again after dinner, and I was like, okay, like, this is a bit more intense. It feels like something is going on. But I kind of left it about an hour, and in that hour, I was just getting these like period pain things going on. And because that continued, in my head, I was like, okay, this is something is going on now. So it started around 7:30. And around 8:30, I sort of said to my partner, I think something's going on. I think this could be something. So let's leave it another hour, but let's think about the arrangements that we need to do for his little girl that we were supposed to have the next day, and just kind of get a few things ready. We then ordered a whole box of, what are they called? Krispy Kremes. And again, it was like my body was like, you're going to need the sugar. You need the rest, you need the sugar, you need the carbs. We had a massive like pasta dinner. And then he was like, should we get some donuts? We're just talking about them. I was like, yeah. And we just sat and like ate a load of donuts. And then around 9 o'clock, I had like a contraction that felt, okay, this is actually quite painful. And that's when we just then said, we're in labour. We're 10 days overdue. So this isn't a fake labour, if you know what I mean. And we made all the arrangements that we needed to do. And then for up until about 9 o'clock, through until I would say like midnight, I was just getting these like contractions that were happening. We spoke to the hospital. They said, obviously, stay at home and manage your pain as much as you can there. So paracetamol, have a bath. For me, the thought of having a bath in such a close, like tight space was just not what I wanted. I needed to be moving through them and like breathing and like rocking back and forward, which is strange because I requested a pool birthing pool, But being in my bath at home, it just wasn't, I just didn't want that at all. But we spoke to the hospital around midnight, and they were like, no, you're not ready, stay in. I was using an app to kind of time my contractions, which again, originally I was like, no, I don't want to do it on app, I want to do it on paper. But Matt, you have not, like, you need the app so good, you press it, it's done for you, and you can then, and it shows you the gaps in between, which I found really useful. Basically, all night, just contractions. They just weren't close enough, and I could still speak through them up until around, I would say, 5 in the morning. So we were up all night. Beth, my partner, stayed up all night with me. He just put the golf on. He like did the things that we were supposed to do ages ago, like put the sleep pod thing together, and I tidied the kitchen. Like, in between contractions, you feel quite normal. But it got up to about 4 a.m, 5 a.m. And I was exhausted because it's been all throughout the night. And they were just getting to the point now where I really felt like I needed some more pain relief. Like, I could barely talk through them. They were almost, I would say, every 3 minutes, 2 minutes. So we rang the hospital around 5 o'clock in the morning, and they were like, yeah, you're ready, like, come in. I was basically set up on our side here with a load of pillows, with our bar stool, my head against the pillows, and I would just rest in between them, and they would come and they would be so intense, and then I would just fall asleep again because I was obviously knackered from being up all night. So we then to hospital. They didn't have we were meant to be in the midwife-led suite with a birthing pool, but they didn't have any of those suites available. So they put us into the delivery suite, but they did put us into the delivery suite that had a pool in, and they offered me like a codeine tablet. So I took one of them, and there was no gas and air in hooked up into this room either at the time, I think. But we had, and in this room, 3 midwives, I think. We just September is mad for babies apparently, and they were so short staffed, bless them. And we had a lot of shift changeovers. So I had one midwife for about 20 minutes, and she went. Then I had another one that did a stretch and sweep on me in this room, and she said that I was in the right stages of labour for what they thought. So you're progressing how we want you to be. Great. Then a birthing suite became available in Mendip, it's called, which is where I wanted to be, which is more midwife-led. So we then got transferred over there, and we got in there around, I would say, like 8 in the morning. And in there, it was a bit lighter. It had gas and air all ready to go. So we sort of set up camp, and I was like, right, this is it. This is it now. Come on. We're gonna give birth in this room, and the contractions are getting worse. I managed to use the gas and air quite well. I didn't feel sick from it at all. The only way that I could use it and I could feel the benefit is that before a contraction would come, I'd really breathe it in, so I'd feel a bit spacey as that contraction came. When a contraction was there, trying to breathe in the gas and air at the same time, I just found that really difficult because I just couldn't get focusing on the two things, if that makes sense. But we were in there 8 in the morning through until about 6 at night, and contractions were close together. They were painful, but they weren't getting closer together. They weren't progressing, basically. And then another midwife, so we had a new midwife, she came in and did a stretch, and just said, actually, from what the other midwife had said, I wouldn't have said that you were that far along. And what I've learned now, since having quite a few of these stretch and sweeps, is that it depends on how big that person's hands are. And they were more painful depending on how that person would do it, if that makes sense. So I was like, okay, fair enough. She probably felt something different to what you have felt. And she basically offered me, some pethidine so I could just rest for a bit, because I had obviously been at this now for about nearly 24 hours, no sleep, barely any food, because I don't really feel like eating. And she just said, look, have some, and I put in my birthing plan, I'm happy to have pethidine as long as it's not near to the birth, because if it's, let's say, an hour, 2 hours, or maybe even longer, it can make the baby really drowsy. And for some people, it also really like took them to another place and they weren't present with that birth happening. But she just said, you're not close enough for that to happen. So you can use it for a way of getting a little bit of rest. And by that point I was knackered. So I was like, yeah, let's go for it. And honestly had it conked out within a second. So there's lots of people that have said they feel really sick. They hated it. For me, I mean, I don't know how someone could have that and then actually give birth, because I instantly fell asleep. I must have been exhausted. And I just remember, like, I was led on the bed, catching flies, looked over, my partner was led on the bed, catching flies. And I think the midwife's like, right, we're just going to leave them to it for a little bit. I think I was asleep for about an hour and a half. And I came round to then contractions. And I'd wake up to a contraction and then fall back asleep instantly. And that happened for about 20 minutes. But I knew the minute I woke up kind of properly that things had slowed down. And there is this thing that with pethidine, it can slow down or it can progress it because you get really relaxed. And I just sat there and I was like, I feel different. Contractions weren't coming as quickly. They weren't as painful. So I was in the room, like star jumping, like on the, like marching up and down on the flight on the spot, like bouncing on the ball like a crazy woman. I was like, come on, let's get these going again. And what I actually found is that whenever I went to the toilet and had a pee, I'd always have a contraction. No matter if I had a contraction a minute before that, I would always have one there. So I was like, right, going to the toilet, drinking loads of water. But about half an hour that I was doing that for, and the midwife came in and just, this is about, I would say about 9 o'clock at night now, and said that a couple of options. We can either do induce you, so break your waters, so intervene, is that what they call it? Or we can send you home and you go home, you relax, and just things will happen more naturally there. So it's really common that people have really long labours and that your body just thinks it's ready and then goes back and all of this. And at that time I said, if I go home with no baby now, I will feel really disheartened. I'm feeling disheartened that my contractions have slowed down, like walking through my front door with no baby after being 10 days overdue, going at this for the 24 hours. I was just like, no, I'm happy. My induction was a couple of days anyway. I was like, I'm happy for my waters to be broken. Anyway, we had another midwife change, and the new midwife said that because I am low risk, and that basically they didn't want to intervene. So the original midwife that we had first said, look, we could potentially break your waters, but the new one said, look, no, we want to send you home and just see if you can progress naturally there. Fine. I was like, okay, that's what's happening. And we then, it must have been about 9:30, and getting into the car, driving through Bristol to get home felt the weirdest thing, because I was like, was this a dream? Did I really go into labour? Like, because my contractions now, I mean, they slowed down so much. They were coming every 10 to 15 minutes or so. But what happened in the car is that when they did come, they were really intense. And I was like, okay, they've upped the pain level, seems to be upped a little bit. But also, I now wasn't on any gas and air. They sent me away with 2 of these like codeine tablets that I didn't take, because I was like, right, I'm only going to take these if I'm like really feel like I need them. Got home, literally walking through the door like, this is it. What is going on? It's a whole nother day. It's literally over 24 hours. And I was like, fine, do you know what I'm going to do? Is we're going to just get into bed. Had a wash, got into bed. And the contractions then, like I said, every about 10 to 15 minutes. Now, what was happening is that they were so painful that I had to stand up. I couldn't lie in bed. So I think I was in bed for about 2 of them. And so yeah, it must have been about half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour or so. And then my partner finally turned the light off. Was like, right, let's actually try and get some sleep. And then another contraction came. And I was like, Jesus. And I literally stood up, pacing the room, like grabbing anything. I was like, this is bad. And my waters broke. And I literally looked down and I was like, I'm so sorry, Sam. I think I've wet myself. I was like, just stood in our bedroom. I don't know what's happening. I just literally got no control. I can't seem to like hold my bladder. And he's like, don't worry. And I like waddled off to the toilet. And then I was like, oh no, I think this is my waters breaking. And because it went onto wood floor, you couldn't see if it was like, I couldn't see at the time if it was clear or had any sort of like a pinky tinge in it. But he wiped up, he's like, yeah, this is pink. And then in the toilet, it just kept on coming. And I was like, I think my waters have just broken. Literally, we were home for about 45 minutes. It was ridiculous. Rang them, they're like, yeah, come straight back in. So drove back in, contractions were every probably 5 minutes, and the pain now was like, okay, I now understand the pain level that these can go to. Even they obviously upped even more, but it just felt like it went from like to here all of a sudden. I'd forgotten to take the codeine tablets, they were left on the side. Anyway, we got back into hospital, and the receptionist was a bit confused about where they wanted to send us, because we're trying to explain we've been here, they're sending us back in. So she put us into triage, where there was all these worried pregnant women who were either like, you know, not even that far gone, or like 6 months or whatever, all just sat there like really looking quite worried, because obviously they're there to get checked out for something. And you've got me literally grabbing the radiators, like the pain that was coming now. Like I said, I hadn't had any pain relief now since the pethidine, which was probably about 4 hours, no, 6, 4 or 5 hours ago. And we were there, and the look on these poor women's faces were like, oh my God, is that what's going to happen? And they kept saying, well, do you want to take my seat? I was like, no. And eventually our midwife walked past us. I was like, what are you guys doing back here? Why are you still here? We're like, we've come back, our waters have broken. She could see in my face, like, okay, we need to get her into a room. Went straight back into the original room that we were in before. And I now cannot remember from midnight, it must have been about 10:30, 11 that we got into that room. From about then till about 4 a.m, when I got into the birthing pool, I have zero memory from, like literally cannot remember anything. And I must have just been going through contractions, but at the point where they were just with gas and air, where they were obviously so bad, I must have blocked them out. I just cannot remember. Anyway, we finally got into the birthing pool, and that must have triggered my memory or got me out of this thing that I was in, because I can remember getting in the pool. I can remember having like no pants on, and my partner being, oh, let me take your sports bra off. And I was like, no, I'm not gonna be naked, like I'm all right. And then in the pool for me, that bit and another little bit at the very end was the most part where it was the most pain and the most like, what is going on basically. And I was in the pool gnawing a towel, like led with my head down on the side of it, gnawing this towel, trying to do the gas and air. But when the contractions came, and they were coming thick and fast now, I couldn't concentrate, because I was just in like, I was like yowling, mooing, the sounds that were coming out of me. And I just couldn't concentrate. They kept saying, now's when you need to breathe, do the gas and air. And I'll try, and I don't know, like ripping the like nozzle off. It was so intense. I look at my partner being like, I need pain relief. And he's like, you're doing fine. I look at the midwife going, please let me have something else now. Like, I'm happy for epidural, I'm happy for anything. Like, I was so desperate. Bear in mind, I hadn't now slept for like 30 odd hours, been in active labour for a long time. And but due to me being so far gone, due to me being in the water and the suite that I was in, there was no further pain relief unless I wanted a bit more pethidine for me to have, I think I was too far gone for them to now move me into a room. They're like, no, we can't do anything else. So I got out of the pool to have a bit of a rest from there. And the minute I got out the pool, I got this feeling that I needed to push. It was like, I'm ready, let's go. And my body was just sort of doing it itself. Like I couldn't stop myself from doing it when a contraction came. But I was quite delirious by this point and just felt like I didn't have the energy. That's kind of how I was feeling, even though I managed to kind of get through it. But at the time then, so they offered me a tiny bit of pethidine. They said, look, I said to I don't want to be drowsy. I don't want the baby to be drowsy. I want to be with it. So they gave me a tiny little bit in my leg this time. And I don't really know if that did much. I think it mellowed me maybe in between contractions, which was like every 30 seconds pretty much. Maybe I remember really being like, when you get woken up, I remember that happening a lot when I was in the pool as well. So but the thing is that once I had pethidine, you can't go back into the pool. But by this point I knew I was pushing and I was like, that's fine. We then did about an hour and a half to 2 hours of the pushing phase, and I cannot tell you where you go for this, because like the sweat that was coming off me, the sheer like determination and like grabbing anything, like I didn't realize I had that like pushing ability in me. I was on a birthing stool, I was doggy styling the bed, like I was right at the edge of the bed with my hands behind it and then like pushing, and she kept saying, yes, that's it. We can see bits. We can see some of the head. And that kept going on and on. We can see some of the head. And also I knew that I had done a number 2 because I was very obvious. And I always knew that when there's poo, baby's coming. I was like, okay, great. But it wasn't. Baby just wasn't coming. And also in that area to push, like you've never pushed in that area before. So it does feel really strange. But we went from birthing stool to bed to standing. We tried loads of different things. And then the midwife was like, right, what I'm going to try and do is basically when you have a contraction, I think I was in the doggy style sort of position, like on my hands and knees. No, sorry, I shouldn't call it doggy style, should I? He's like, I'm going to try and basically move his head with my hands. And that for me, the pain, oh my God, contracting was horrendous. And then I've got someone basically putting their hands inside me and like moving the head. And I couldn't do the gas and air by this point. I'd just given up with that because it's too difficult to concentrate. And so she did that a couple of times. And then she said, right, I need a second opinion because baby's head should be here by now. And I think there's a reason why it's not. So we then, oh God, I remember this better now. So we are into Wednesday now. So it's Wednesday morning around 6 o'clock. And we get put into a wheelchair, wheeled down to the delivery suite to get a second opinion from the head midwife. And we then had quite a clinical room. And there wasn't that many people around, but there was her, my midwife, Sam, and then I think someone else. And I was hooked up by this point now to like a monitor, and she goes, right, we're going to do what we were doing before. When you get a contraction, I'm going to try and move his head. And again, I just remember being they didn't give me any gas and air at this stage either. But when a contraction came, in so much pain and trying my absolute hardest to push, that every time I would stop a contraction, I literally like curled into a ball. And they did that maybe 4 or 5 contractions, I think. And they're like, right, we're going to do it again. And I literally looked like straight in the eye and I was like, I can't continue this at this level without something to help me. Like I was in so much pain. I was exhausted. I was also a bit terrified by this point. We've been going at this for nearly 2 days. And then the heart rate monitor just went, I remember looking over and it went beep, like to 0. And within a split second, I had 10 people over me. And they were basically, as I had all these different people saying, right, we're going to do 2 different options. One's with an epidural to basically do forceps delivery. And the other isn't with epidural, but we're going to try and not. I can't remember what the other option was, but I remember them basically saying there's 2 options. And then I think with the heart rate going and the fact they could probably see that I was struggling with the pain at this point, that I got flipped onto my back within a second. I had 10 people over me introducing themselves. I'm sure if anyone's done C-section this before, they'll remember. It is so intense. I then the anaesthetist, got that right, telling me something. I had someone putting a gas and air thing on me at the same time, and someone else fitting a catheter, and all talking to me at the same time and giving me instructions. And that just, I remember thinking, all right, I got to go to, again, another level of concentration now. But the sense of relief when they said, you're having a contraction at the moment, and I couldn't feel it. Like, I remember the nurse looking at me being like, does that feel good? And I was like, I cannot explain. Like, especially from the fact that since coming back into hospital, they were so intense. And that was then, almost 12 hours of that with still no baby there. So, and then this bit was basically forceps, and they were like, right, we need you to push as much as you can. Obviously, you've got to push from your head because you can't feel anything. And I think I did about 2 or 3 of them, and head came, shoulder got stuck slightly, and then body came. And they did something before putting him on my chest because I wanted skin on skin. But as they put him on my chest, I'm going to try not to cry now. So he came onto my chest and was still blue and not crying. And I literally looked at them and I was like, take him back. Like, something isn't right. And they then took him off, did a load of stuff, cried, stopped crying. And that's what I hated. It was that, like, started crying, stopped crying, started crying, stopped crying. And I was just like, that was the only time that I got worried. For some reason, I had it in my head the whole labour. You staring? Yeah. You might notice I'm crying. What I do is cry these days. The whole labour, I never ever worried about him. I was like, it's fine, he's fine. We're in a safe space in hospital until that point, obviously. And it was just, that was so intense. And then finally came back on my chest and he was beaten. Like, the first picture, hang on a minute, he was okay. He just needed a little cuddle. And he'd gone pretty much straight back to sleep. So that was the only time where I really worried. I was like, okay, something doesn't feel right. But luckily, he came onto my chest then and had skin on skin, which was amazing. But he was black and blue, like swollen. There's 2 pictures of him that they took, one directly after delivery and one about 4, maybe 2-3 hours after. I can't look at either of them. They are so distressing to look at. Like, that's the only part that I struggle with. I can't remember where I was. Yes, the pictures. There's 2 pictures that I just cannot look at. I actually randomly went onto them yesterday and I was like, oh God, they still make me feel so sad. But the reason for I don't know if you call it emergency forceps, but the reason for the forceps was that his head was big baby. He was 9'2", I think, when he came out. But his head just wasn't in line with the hole. So it just, no matter how we tried to do it, it just wasn't going to happen that way. And I feel so grateful that I got all of that experience up until that point. And so grateful that we managed to get him out safe and sound. And that he's recovered so well from the forceps. And I'm hoping that, so I got a 3rd degree tear. So it was in quite a lot of pain. afterwards, and luckily I've healed really well, but it was pretty bad, like zero control, and that's maybe for another day. But I hope that I can still, if I have a second, that I can still go down the route of as natural as possible. As when I say natural, as in not having to have a planned something like a planned C-section. Some people, if they have a tear that bad, they're advised not to go into natural labour again. But I think it all depends on how you heal. So I'm hoping that, because I would absolutely do it all again. Do it all again. People say, oh, that will fade, but I get jealous when someone tells me they're pregnant, because I'm like, oh my God, they get to do labour. And even though, like I said, my partner and my mum, my mum is traumatised. She wasn't even there, but she was just getting updates from Sam because it was long, and she just thinks that it was traumatic and all these things, where even the bits that were scary, I look back in fondness with, because I was so present in that moment. Can I say what I found the hardest, or what I am finding the hardest, is postpartum. I thought I was a strong character, but postpartum has hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm actually going to do a separate video, I think, on that. I might actually just quickly film that now, because that for me has been an eye-opener. But that is my journey with pregnancy, or my journey with labour. Any questions, if you've been through the same, or you're currently pregnant, honestly, like, I love talking about it. I think pregnancy's become my new favourite thing. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I hope it was useful for some people. And please, if you're going into labour, like, don't be scared. You're doing what your body is made to do. It's natural. You can do it. You've just got to keep that fighting spirit going, and your body is designed, a female body is designed to give birth. So just get yourself in a good headspace before. That's the one thing I did, as I always had that, my body is capable, I can do this. I didn't do any hypnobirthing, I didn't do any classes. I just believed that I could do it. And if his head wasn't so big and slightly wonky, I probably would have. But that's why forceps and C-sections are there, to help us if we can't. So anyway, I'm going to keep feeding this little munchkin, and I'll speak to you guys soon.